Hello YouTube, welcome to Gaming from the First Stage. My name is First Stage, not really, and I'm here to talk about 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically in this video, it's kind of a play primer, so I want to talk about 4th edition, maybe a little bit about how it's different, and what we're going to do in this video is focus in on the standard 4th edition character sheet, and take a look at the content of the character sheet, and we'll be able to, by doing so, we'll be able to draw out, I think, some of the things that are very similar to other editions, and maybe some of the things that are quite different. And it's kind of designed. This video, I think, is designed to help you get a feel for where the 4th edition is for you a little bit. I have to say, though, it's the same with all these games, isn't it? You don't really know until you play. So if you haven't yet played it and you're on the fence, then this will maybe be a primer to give you a ready reckoner about what you might be getting when you do actually play. And I do encourage you, of course, to give it a go. So, 4th edition, yeah, it's got many similarities to all the other D&Ds. I mean, as you will find in a moment, but it's got its own take on things in places. And as a consequence, it changes the way that characters interact with the game a little bit. You'll find that. So it did slay a few sacred cows of the Dungeons and Dragons family. But at its core, the game uses really very similar things. It's still the D20 system, of course. So as a consequence, it's got all the core things that you would expect D&D to have. It has races, it has classes, it has levels, lots of levels, and incrementing hit points. That's the sort of conceit that it has. And so it's roll a d20 and add bonuses that are derived from your abilities, your skills, your feats, your powers, your items, any other circumstantial factors that go in to score a number. That number would be as high as you can get, and it needs to be higher than a difficulty class, which is the difficulty you're trying to beat. And in that sense, it's just the same as, well, a lot of the modern D&Ds anyway, certainly from 3 and up. Yeah, what can I say? So that's fundamentally it is a pass-fail system. So you either succeed or you fail, and possibly you're critical. But I found that 4E, in terms of theme, it does heroics and super heroics very, very well. It doesn't do gritty. So you want a gritty game, do something else. Arguably play Mithras, but yeah, it's very much super heroic. Characters start very tough. As well, I'm going to show you a fifth level character actually of the 4th edition, but they start very tough. Probably a first level 4th edition character probably feels a bit like a 3rd level character in 5th edition. I would say. So heroics all round. It's a traditional game, so it's traditional mode. The DM creates the world, the scenario, the setting. The NPCs around the PCs. I think there's something about the way that the game is written and the clarity with which it's expressed that it pushes player agency, I would say. I think players are able to just state what they're doing. And because of the unequivocal way in which the game is written and expected to play out, and we'll look at that in a bit, it just happens. There's not any sort of dungeon master sort of consideration in a lot of places. Either something will work or it won't, and it's very clear in the way the game plays. So in that sense, it perhaps... And that's when we go onto the grid. We will talk about the grid, or theatre of the mind, but the taxonomy of the game is quite clear, and therefore actually is great for player agency. It's a team game, as you might expect. A party of adventurers is going to succeed if you have a range of roles that the characters have, and having a balance of these roles. And there are indeed, those roles are in fact in 4th edition are quite strongly codified. So you might be a striker, and a striker will include character classes that are particularly good at dishing out damage. And that doesn't mean that you're just a fighter at all, actually. In fact, fighters might be defenders now I think about it. I'll have to think about that. I'm not quite sure. But a sorcerer would be a striker. And we're going to look at a sorcerer in a minute. They're good at just boshing out damage. That's what they do. You might be a leader, in which case you are there to support the team as they go into battle. You might be a controller. You're looking to control the environment and control the enemies. You might be a defender. You're very good at holding the line and keeping people on you while the rest of the group are able to do other things. It's really well done. It's really well done. And so it's a team game, much like any other D&D, but it expresses it in a very slightly different way. And that's probably, for me, the big takeaway from 4th edition. For me, 4th edition is quintessentially D&D, actually, whilst being quite different. And if you can do both things at once, then that's fine. But it does have significant differences, and we will definitely look at those. Yeah, I think actually I've probably done enough before we can actually head into... Let's head into the character sheet itself. And I'll focus on the character sheet and talk some more about characters and how they are different. Now, the character sheet I'm going to show you is the classic output from the character builder. So it's the classic 4th edition character sheet. I don't think necessarily, although it's efficient in what it does, I don't want it to put you off. It's a bit of a tax form, you know, and in some ways it's a bit like Pathfinder 2nd edition in that sense. There are better expressions or more friendly expressions of the character sheet. Probably there's some essentials versions, I think, which, you know, make you just chill. You can watch it and you chill. This makes you sort of think, I'm filling in a tax form. So don't panic when it comes up, right? Just calm yourself now, just managing expectations. But it has got everything on it, almost. And yeah, I'll guide you through that. So without further ado, right, deep breath, ready? Let's go. Bosh. Ah! There we go. All right, panicky not. So I have got the 4th edition character sheet here. It's actually in a Google Doc as an image, so I can scroll around a little bit with it. Oh, it's just what I'm doing. No, I just don't argue. It's the way it is. So hopefully you can read that. I will take you through and guide you through that as best as I can. Yeah, so this is a 5th level sorcerer we're going to be looking at. And so she's halfway through her heroic tier. She's an established hero. And yeah, let's jump to it. So, as you can see here, ability scores on the left there. Well, they are, of course, the familiar 6 D&D ability scores, which are burned into every D&D player's mind. So, strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And as with most D&Ds, they are completely, almost, not quite, but they're almost completely redundant. They don't do anything other than give the bonus. The bonus is to the right there. You've got an ability modifier and then an ability modifier plus half level. So let me explain that. Proficiency level bonuses, well, it's in D&D 4th edition, it's half your level. So almost everything that you can do increases by +1 every 2 whole levels. So it's roughly in between 3rd edition and 5th edition, which I suppose, given it's 4th edition, is probably about right, isn't it? So, as I say, it's added to just about everything. So at 10th level and heading out to heroic to paragon tier, you've got a pretty hefty +5 on everything across the board. This 5th edition character has +2. Because it's 2 whole levels. So when she gets to 6th level, she'll be on +3. And so the bonuses there are on the far right hand side of those ability scores. Ability scores are created in kind of the usual ways. I think you can do various forms of dice rolling. You can roll 10d6 and keep the best 3 or whatever you feel like. It doesn't recommend that. It's probably 4 and keep the highest 3 or something. So you can roll them. They also provide a whole range of stat arrays, so you can pick your stat array and place them appropriately, and then you'll get bonuses for race on top of that. And then as levels go up. I think it's at 4th level. You get +1 in a couple. And so it goes as you go up the levels. And in that sense, it's not that dissimilar really at all from 5th edition. So that's your stats, that's your proficiencies and where they are. You'll find the pluses all over the place on this sheet. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Down to skills. It's a slightly smaller skill list than 5th edition, or indeed 3rd edition, or 3.5. They're well described. They're cut down a little bit from 3rd, as I say, for ease. And your class and race defines the ones that you are trained in. And in 5th edition, trained in means you get a +5 to that skill. So that's quite handy, to say the least. And then, of course, you've got your proficiency bonus on top, plus potentially bonuses from feats as well. So that's kind of how they go. And again, skills quite well defined. D20 plus your skill bonus against various sorts of difficulties. I mentioned feats. The game does have feats, and you get plenty of them. They are somewhat similar, I would say, to 3rd edition. Oh, so I'm told. So they do a whole variety of things. They either open up particular abilities to you. You get race features, you get class features, and you get general features. Let me just have a little look. You can see there under race features, this character is a tiefling. And so for being a tiefling, you get some stuff. You get, what do you get? You get Infernal Wrath. That sounds quite good. You've got the Infernal Wrath power. Excellent. Well, I suppose that's somewhere else in the... we'll look at powers further down. Tieflings have fire resistance. There you go. You have resist fire at 5 plus half your level. So currently, I've got resist fire of 7. I get hit by a fire effect. Well, 7 worth of that damage ain't going to touch me because I'm a tiefling. There you go. And I also get Blood Hunt as a tiefling. So I get +1 to attacks against bloodied enemies. A bloodied enemy in 4th edition is an enemy that has been reduced to half its hit points or worse. And in 4th edition, bloodied is a thing. And it triggers abilities. In this case, it would trigger your feat. So in terms of... So we're starting to get into the gameplay. You need to be aware... I mean, does it matter? Well, obviously it benefits you. That if you're fighting an opponent that is now bloodied, well, in this case, you actually get an extra +1 as another bonus for your rolls. So you've got your feats. Yeah, what else have you got? You've got loads of stuff. I'm going to come back to powers. I described them here. I'm going to come back to powers. Let me just come to your defenses. So in 4th edition, one of the interesting designs of 4th edition is that all your defenses are static numbers. You don't roll a defense in that sense. You do roll saving throws. A saving throw is a flat check at a 10+. Well, usually 10+, unless you've got something that helps you to get out of a condition. Typically, it's to get out of a condition. But your defenses, the things that protect you, are static numbers. And in this case, our Sorcerer has got an armor class. Armor class, standard of what you'd expect. That's the number that an opponent needs to roll equal to or higher than to damage this character, at least against armor class. Which, again, I'll have a look at powers because it doesn't really work in quite the same way as some of the D&Ds. And then you've got Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. And these are effectively defenses that other things will attack and try and beat. So for my character, she's a sorcerer. She's got great willpower, 19. Much harder to be attacked. If the particular attack against her is a willpower attack, targeted attack, she's got a bit of a better defense. Her fortitude, not quite so strong at a 13. So if it's a fortitude attack, she's going to be a bit more vulnerable. So you've got these static defenses, and they again will go up with level, go up with feats, and are sort of partially based also on your attributes as well. Or your abilities, as they're called, or your ability scores. Movement. So we will get onto the grid. Movement is expressed in well, squares actually. So it's 5 foot blocks. So she can move. Actually, it's 30 feet. It's just it's 6 inches, sort of 5 foot lengths. We also have things like passive insight and passive perception. I think that's fairly familiar. Hit points. Again, characters have a good number of hit points in 4th edition. So okay, we're looking at a 5th level character. 44 hit points, pretty chunky. Bloodied. Characters can also be bloodied. And she has hit points bloodied of 22. So she's down to 22 hit points. She's bloodied. That means that other things which have powers which are influenced by something being bloodied will kick in at that point. Healing surges. So healing surges are a way of rousing yourself, rallying, chewing on the cigar, digging deep into your psyche and basically re-energizing yourself to continue to play. It's a bit like, I think, hit dice in 5th edition. So she gets 7 surges a day, so it's a resource that she can spend. Typically, in a combat encounter, there is a power called Second Wind, which means that you sort of go, and you can spend a healing surge and gain, in her case, 11 hit points. It's usually a quarter of your hit points that you get back. And then it's in short rests. In short rests, or indeed long rests, well, it's typically in short rests, you can spend your healing surges to basically get back to better hit points. And in that sense, it's a heroic game. You sort of rally and keep going. And there's all sorts of ways that you can talk about that in a thematic way, in a sort of role-playing kind of way. So that is healing surges. Movement we've covered. I'll talk about the grid a bit later. Defenses are static. We've covered that. Let's have a look further down the sheet. Your basic attacks. So this is the second page of the sheet. Starts to list out your powers. We're going to look at powers because the character sheet that is generated by the character builder effectively creates power cards, which we're going to have a look in a moment, which are basically all the cool things you can do. You do get basic attacks, which are up here on the right. As you can see, these the attack workspace. With her dagger of defense +1, she's got a magic dagger. She gets a +6 to her attack roll, a d20 roll, and that's made up of a variety of things. And she'll do a massive d4 +1. What's her strength? Strength doesn't give her a bonus. Yeah, okay. Okay. So she's not great at the basic attacks. But the key thing about this is, apart from in certain circumstances, you're unlikely to use basic attacks. Sometimes you will, actually. But typically, you'll be using your powers and your at-will powers. And those are the ones you're going to use because they are sort of infused with the energy and the capabilities of your class, race, and so on. It's fantastic. So that's what you'll get to. But sometimes basic attacks are used. So all the powers are listed here. Magic items, she does have a few. I could talk about magic items. They're quite nicely done, actually, in 4th edition, I think. I prepared this for a convention that I'm going to be running quite soon for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. So I've just simply put in some personality traits. Alignment. Let me pop back up for alignment. She's unaligned. Now you're going to ask me what the alignments is in 4th edition. 4th edition almost, I would say almost, but didn't quite get rid of the alignment grid. I can hear a wild cheer from you out there, or a shocked suck of the teeth and a what? Yeah, they almost got rid of it. There are a few alignments left, sort of lawful good, good, unaligned, jolly evil. I think jolly evil is one. It hasn't got the sort of classic sort of 9-point grid with something sort of vaguely more Cockean and something vaguely not, sort of bundled together. You're either a big fan of the alignment grid or not. I'm not a huge fan of it personally. It has its place in game. I think alignment makes, and I could be wrong, but I think alignment makes almost no difference whatsoever. It's an aid to work out how to play. And the game obviously describes what these alignments are and probably gives you some idea of the gods that you may worship as a consequence of your alignment, maybe. But other than that, there isn't a lot, I don't think, in the power structure of the game which targets an alignment in that sense. I'll be proven wrong. I'll get letters, but I don't think so. But they didn't quite get rid of it. And then, of course, in 5th edition, they just put it back in again. There we are. Retrograde step, in my view. So some personality traits, her views on her companions and allies. That's something just to help her play. And then we get into the juicy powers. So these are the power cards. The power cards actually, as printed here, do a slight replication of the character sheet. It's got a basic stats here, the kind of the stats and the bonuses, the defenses, the hit points and the doohickey, the skills, action points. Action points is the thing in the game. You gain action points essentially one every 2 encounters, and an action point enables you to undertake another action. I will talk about the actions possibly now. So the game is a turn-based game. It's no different. It's typically D20 plus your dex. So your initiative there, she's on a +7 initiative, I can see. There'll be reasons for that. I think she must have a feat or something that helps with that. Or it might be that actually, I think it might be that there's a power down here which means that she can use her charisma as her stat for initiative and not dex. There's all sorts of things you can play around with the powers that really sort of set you up nicely. But action points basically give you another action. So what is the action economy in the game? So it's turn-based. Highest number goes first. It's classic stuff. You get standard actions, move actions, minor actions, free actions, and some interrupt triggered actions. A standard action will typically be your power or main attack. So it's the major thing you're doing in the round. Your move action enables you to move. In this case, she's got a move of 6. You can swap these out though, and so she could decide to move twice instead. A minor action is a handy extra thing you can do. It's not your main action, but it gives you another little thing to do. Some powers are minor actions, for example. I think if you're Dragonborn, if you want to sort of cough your sort of dragon-like breath on somebody, that's actually a minor action, I think. And your free actions, you can do a number of those. Triggered actions will tend to be things like attacks of opportunity and things like that, but also sort of readying and waiting and then triggering on something. So it's fairly standard in that sense in the way it works, and it's fairly smooth in action. I'll come back to game complexity in a minute because, yeah, it's an interesting one. The game plays, I think, pretty fast. Now, I've said this before. You know, if you're playing out a combat, it should take you about an hour. They're quite intense. 4E doesn't kind of do little tiny skirmishy stuff. Every combat is a significant thing, and so it takes a little bit of significant time. It can be fast if you take the view that players need to plan and prepare their turn on the way round while they're waiting for their turn to turn up. Then it's pretty fast. If it gets to your turn and you haven't even thought about what you're going to do, and then start to go then it will take quite a while. And I'll show you in a minute because we're about to look at powers, and you get quite a few. So although they're not difficult and they're not complicated on the whole, you do get quite a lot of them. So it's being paralysed by choice, I think, probably is the thing. So you need to plan ahead. Long rests are 6 hours, short rests are 5 minutes, so really short. A short rest is short. It's a moment of dramatic composure before plunging onward. You might be remembering a loved one, or psyching yourself up, or splashing water in your face, or gritting your teeth, or beating your chest. You can visualise it as you wish, which of course is the nice thing about 4E. It describes a thing and an effect, and then it's for you to almost narrate what that means for your character. And you can spend your healing surges then on your long rests. Powers. There's your second wind. I mentioned the second wind. So in an encounter, and you can see that the encounter there is ticked. And that's important for the game because the games have fundamentally got at-will powers. You can do them as often as you like. Yep. So they are a repeatable, free sort of, not free action. Typically they're standard actions, but it's a repeatable action you can just keep doing. An encounter action is one that you can undertake once per encounter. There are some variations on that, but fundamentally it's once per encounter. Then you've got a daily, which means that once per day you can do that thing. And as you might expect, the power level of a daily is going to be somewhat higher than an encounter, which is going to be somewhat higher than an at-will. So it's been quite nicely designed in that sense. So second wind, you can see there, you spend a healing surge and regain 11 hit points. Well, she will, because her healing surges give her 11 hit points. And you gain a +2 bonus to all defenses until the start of your next turn. That's your armor class and your fort will and reflex. Nice. So you sort of gird your loins, suck your teeth in. I'm going to do this. And you get a little bit of bonus on your defenses and your hit points go up 11. Nice. So, the greens are your at-wills, and she's got some... so I've actually included the melee basic attack here. That's the very basic attack that she can do. There's a ranged basic attack. There's a bull rush attack when you basically hurl yourself and push an opponent back 1 square. And there's also sort of grabbing, which is the sort of... grappling, I suppose, kind of rules all on a card. So those are very basic things that I think pretty much everybody gets those, including the second wind. Action points. So that's all common across all characters. All characters get those. And let's start to look at some more. Another one that everybody gets in 4E is an opportunity attack. So basically when an opponent within your reach, depending on the weapon you have or whatever it might be, vacates a square around you, typically they will provoke an opportunity attack, and that will be you make a melee basic attack there against that opponent, and that's an at-will. So that's triggered by the triggering enemy. Range is melee 1, so it's 1 square in this case. I will talk about the grid. Or 5 feet in 5e terms. And then we've got 2 at-will powers that are unique to her, or unique to her being a sorcerer. She's got Ensorcelled Blade and Chaos Bolt. So in a combat encounter, she can use these as often as she likes. Ensorcelled Blade is an attack. She's a striker. She's good at striking things. It's a +11, and it's versus the target's armor class defense, not the other 3, but the armor class defense. What do we say? And all powers have a little descriptive text to them to give you that thematic feel about what they are. Not mechanical, narrative. Your blade flashes into action in a painful riposte as your innate magical power flows into it. So her power, her sorcerer power, flows through her dagger. What does it do? Right, you must be wielding a dagger. Okay, that's going to help. You can see this. It's all clearly set out. And the attack is a charisma-based attack versus armor class. And that's why, for her, that's going to be a d20 +11, because she's got a great charisma, because she's a sorcerer. But it's also an attack. But it's a sorceress attack. So she gets the benefit of her charisma rather than a melee basic attack, which would be her strength. But it's all on the card. So you're not left with any doubt about that. 1W is 1 weapon die. So it will be d4 +8 because it adds her charisma. What else has it got? It's +8 for some reason. It's all built in. Nice. If the target hits or misses you with a melee attack before the start of your next turn, it takes damage equal to the extra damage from your spell source class feature. Wow. So even on a miss, or even if her opponent misses, they're also in trouble. So it's got extra things. It's like a basic attack. There's sorcery involved in this attack. What's the Chaos Bolt? Well, the Chaos Bolt is your classic kapow, isn't it? You can see rather than being a melee weapon and one creature, it is a one creature target, but it's a ranged 10. Or in 5e terms, that would be range 50 feet. And this time it's d20 plus 8 she gets her roll. And the defense that she's getting at is will. It's not armor class. It's the opponent's will she's trying to attack. And this one she gets charisma versus will. Hit 1d10 damage this one, plus charisma modifier. So it's 1d10 plus 5. Nice. Oh, of course she's got a dagger of defense, which gives her bonuses as well, which is why that's upping it as well. Yeah, sometimes magic items also give you bonuses into these things, which is rather sweet. So she's got that, which is rather good. She's also got magic, wild magic and secondary magic. So there's all sorts of things interplaying here. She's got her basic attack. She's got these fantastic powers, which are very, very thematic. Again, let's read it out. A bolt of many-coloured light leaps from your hand and screams towards an enemy's head. That's very specific. Which is great. There's a lovely piece. I'll come on to wild magic because actually I think I've added what a sorcerer's wild magic does at the bottom of the character sheet. So we'll see that in a minute. And then you're on to the reds. Well, the reds are the encounter power. So these are the ones that you can do once per encounter. Infernal Wrath. That was, I think, given to her possibly as because she is a tiefling. But you call upon the hellfire burning in your soul to punish your enemy. The trigger for this power, encounter power, close burst 10. Is this right? Blimey, this is quite good. An enemy within 10 squares of you hits you. Wow, even at range, you're not safe from a effect. The target takes 1d6 plus int modifier. For her, it's 1d6 plus 1. Or charisma modifier. She'll use that. 1d6 plus 5 fire damage. Yeah, don't mess with me. You will just burn. You will burn if you touch me. I love it. And as you can see, some of these powers actually heighten with level. So she's 5th level. When she gets to level 11, it'll be 2d6 plus 5, or whatever her charisma modifier might be at level 11. Nice. Tiefling. Don't mess with tieflings. They get very fiery on you. What else has she got? She's got explosive pyre. She's got stormy emotions as well. Range 10, close burst 2. Let's look at stormy emotions. That looks interesting. Close burst 2, so it's everything 2 squares around her, I think. Each creature in the burst. Oh, it's a burst 2. Yeah, okay. Weaving raw emotion into your spell, you unleash a brutal attack against those around you. Charisma versus reflex this time. Can you get out of the way, I guess is what it's saying. And those that fail, they get 2d10 plus cold damage and lightning damage. And you can push the target 1 square, 5 feet, and knock it prone. There's a wave of stormy emotions that you've got to try and get out of the way of. That's a plus 8 against reflex, 2d10 plus 3 damage. And interestingly, the cards, you can see at the bottom of each of these cards, the additional effects there. It's reminding you, because you're a tiefling, plus 1 racial bonus to attack against bloodied foes. Or blood hunt. Oh no, she's a blood hunted sorcerer. It's a sorcerer thing, I think. Anyway, I'm rambling. And then you get onto the greys. The greys are simply, again, powers, but they can be used once per day. Lightning breath. Close blast 3. Oh, this is a blast rather than a burst, so this goes out. You exhale a blast of lightning at your foes. The lightning then forms a ring around you, repelling nearby attackers. So it's not just a blast, it does more. Charisma versus reflex. 3d8 damage plus charisma, so 3d8 plus 5. If you miss with your roll, you still do half damage. That's quite neat. So even if you think you're dodgy enough against the reflex, you'll still get blasted a bit. And until the end of your next turn, whenever an enemy hits you with a melee attack, you push that enemy 1 square. And depending on her magic, if she's got dragon magic, the enemy will also take 5 lightning damage for the temerity of trying to hit this sorcerer. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Moon and stars. So it goes. So those are the powers. So I've just reeled out some of them. As you can see, she's good at splatting things, basically. We've mentioned the second wind already. Now that's interesting. She's got a utility power. So these, it's an encounter power, but it's a utility power. So it won't typically attack someone. I'm going to say it won't typically attack. It's an effect. What's this one? You spin around, releasing a blaze of golden energy as you finish your revolution. You disappear and reappear a short distance away. Number of squares equal to half your speed. So in her case, that's going to be 3, isn't it? So suddenly she can just go bosh, bosh and reappear somewhere else 3 squares away. She sort of teleports. Spatial trip. That's part of her sorcery. And she's got some nice magical items, which often magical items in 4E have also come with an effect. It's like a power. They've got a power. So they don't just give you a +1. They give you something else. What is it? Was it a dagger of defense, for example? On a daily basis, you can summon it and use it. Immediate interrupt. You take damage from a melee attack that hits you. The effect that you can do is you take only half of the damage. So you can decide to interrupt and just half damage because you've got your dagger of defense. Awesome. Right, let me just pop over this way a little bit. So I've just taken some text from the player's handbook about wild magic. So that if you want to play a sorcerer, it explains kind of how your wild magic works. It's got a lot of really nice little effects, including different damage types that you can have. Things that happen when you roll a natural 20, for example. You roll for an arcane power and you slide the target 1 square and knock it prone after applying the attack's other effects. Awesome. Yeah, really nice. So there's an extra wild and semi-random element to a sorcerer's power. Again. Yeah, so that's kind of a 4th edition character. So what I would say is that, yes, there's quite a lot going on in that sheet. It's a 5th level character. But typically, you know, when it comes to your turn, you can probably pretty much do one of those things. If I look down again, most of these are standard actions. Standard actions, they're all standard actions. The Chaos Bolt is a standard action. The Ensorcel Blade is a standard action. Infernal Wrath is actually a free action. I think you can do that once, actually, in a round. Don't know. I'll have to check the rules on that. But nice. Don't attack a tiefling. That case, the answer. Explosive Pyre. Explosive Pyre. And Stormy Emotions. Grr. Standards. So, yes, there's a lot going on. Essentially, when you're waiting for your turn to come up, you pick the thing you want to do, and then you do it. And so, although there's some choice, you've got time to do that. And actually, I've seen combats be pretty damn quick because the players get to know their powers, of course, and pick one. And if you're not always picking the most optimal power, well, what the hell? It's all good fun. So, yeah, that's 4th edition. So, I will talk about the grid. I keep saying I'm going to talk about the grid because, of course, obviously, it is all enumerated in squares, basically in 5-foot lengths. I have found it to be simple to play, as in play as a DM running everything. You just pick a thing and do it, and accepting you've got like minor actions as well, and indeed an opportunity to move. Yeah, that's kind of about it. I'm going to say. I'm not going to talk about too much about skill challenges. They do feature in most games as a way of basically making skill rolls and other things that build up to an overall success. It's kind of okay. Go on then. Let's talk about the grid. let's talk about the grid. What I might do actually is say goodbye to the character sheet. I'm going to say goodbye to Makala, the tiefling sorcerer. So I'm looking forward to seeing her in action a little bit later in the convention I'm running in July, which I might talk about. I don't know. Let's see. Anyway, let me come back to me for a minute. Hello. So goodbye then. The grid then. Let's talk about the grid. Why not? Seems like a good thing to do. D&D 4e explicitly states play on a grid because it's fab. Describing your movement, area and effects in squares. So in that sense, it's all very straightforwardly laid out. When you use a spell, you can see the area of effect. Of course, you know, I play in a Curse of Strahd game in 5th edition. Fantastic, great fun. Thanks, Dom. And that's on a grid. We will always use, typically we use sort of wonderful Mike Schley maps. And they've got grids. And we play on the grid. So actually, it's not that different. But, in theory, 5th edition made a big song and dance about saying, we don't need the grid anymore. We don't need the grid anymore. But no, you're free of the grid. Theatre of the mind. Right, these spells, they're all in sort of feet lengths. Your movement's in feet. And we've got like a turn order. Hang on. Just the same as before, really. But you don't need a grid. So what am I saying? Yes, 4th edition does expect you to use a grid. A cup of tea. Have you got a cup of tea? Hope you have. I would say there is a neo-positivist clarity to the game. You can't deny it. Your freezing cloud isn't shivering in a zone of consensual theatre of the mind uncertainty. No. It's a kind of, there's no epistemic relativism here. It's like it's on a square. And if your target's in the square, in the zone, well, it gets the effect. If it's outside the zone, it don't. And so you have that clarity, I'm going to say. So in that sense, yes, you need a grid. The fact that everything is in 5 foot lengths is really not very different to any other game. It's just, it happens to be specified so that you can do it on the grid easier. You don't have to do the maths to say how many squares it is because it calculates it for you. So much as you can assert that a table, right, exists because you can put your pint on it, so in 4th edition, you can confidently understand which of the goblins are in your freezing cloud because it's set out on a grid. Now, without wishing this to be entirely reductionist, when it comes to the grid, all editions really are the same. I would say. They're all measured in exact feet. I mean, I played 1st edition back in 81 to 83. I can't remember anything about it, really. The game didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it was a lot of fun. That was all in feet as well. Maybe the 6th edition will move more to sort of spontaneous hand-wavy zones of influence. And more, frankly, more power to it if they do. But for now, feet and inches, baby. Feet and inches. Nothing wrong with Theatre of the Mind. But I would say, bleh, to be honest, bleh. I think 4th edition is just honest. It sets out with all the rigour and puts the measurements into 5 foot lengths. And I know 4th edition DMs who happily run 4th edition Theatre of the Mind. So there's been a lot of play about the grid and a lot of talk about the grid. I may be wrong, but for all the mechanical precision with which the visualization is enacted on the grid, the interpretation of how the powers do what they do, as we've seen on the power cards, is incredibly rich and imaginative, with a lot of latitude for interpretation and exposition. So 4th edition is an interesting game. It has all that sort of built-in, coded certainty about what and where is going to happen, because it just explains how it works. And it just works. But in terms of providing a narrative overlay on top of 4th edition, that's highly inventive and creative. So it's kind of got both, which is quite interesting. So there we are. Interesting, very interesting. Complexity then. I suppose it's the question about complexity. So I'm saying it's not that different, even though it's different. And it is different. The powers thing is quite different. And all classes have powers, and they're thematically described, and they all kind of can do potent effects, but they feel very different. But they're all good. But there's a balance and symmetry to the powers and to the classes, pretty much. So all characters have a part to play. You don't tend to have the thing, possibly in the 3rd edition games, maybe certainly when if I remember 1st edition, which is a long time ago now, AD&D. As long as you can get your mage to at least 6th or 7th level, and that was a feat in itself, then suddenly the spell catalogue that you get is so vast that suddenly you become the best game in town. In 4th edition, it's pretty much balanced. Everyone can do amazing things equally, kind of thing. But that doesn't answer the question on complexity. That just talks about, I guess, symmetry in terms of the class design and the power levels. How complex is 4th edition in comparison to others and to 5th? And 5th is a great introductory version of D&D. I can see why it's done so very well. And I certainly don't dislike 5th edition. I play it and very happily. So I think there seems to be a mix of views here. Now, in terms of its complexity, it looks... I've deliberately sort of pulled out the character sheet because it does make you think... but there's not that much going on in some ways. You just need to... You've got a lot of choice, I guess. I think prevailing at the time, so we're going back a decade... ish or more, there was a feeling that it was a dumbed down version of D&D that accentuated combat and made it very easy for the DM to run a game, because actually it's dead simple. There's lots of other reasons why it's simple to run, but it's just quite well codified, particularly combat encounters, and of course a lot of your powers. But I picked a striker. No, all the powers really are great in combat encounters. You've got some utility powers, and you have rituals. So that's another facet of the game. You can have rituals which do kind of other cool things, which anyone can cast if they've got the right feats and so on, and the money to buy them. So, yeah, So there was one view that was dumbed down. No, it's just dumbed down. It's just really dumbed down. There was also apparently a view, however, that was contrary to that at the time, that because all the classes were structured similarly and therefore all had really cool powers, which they do, it's true, that somehow it was more complicated because you had to look at a power. You didn't have just a character that was just, well, I just rolled a d20 and that's what I do. I roll a d20 and I hit things and it's that number. It's not that I don't have any choice. I just do that thing, one thing every round. And because it's got all this complexity of the powers, it's a complex game. There was this thing about my fictional little brother wouldn't be able to play it, and so it's a disaster in terms of design. What a load of nonsense. What a complete load of nonsense. I think 4E is probably, if anything, a simpler version of the game. I found it one of the easiest versions of D&D to pick up and play. But there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, and there's probably a lot on the GM or the DM to run it well. I think my two caveats on complexity are, so yes, you've got a lot of powers. They don't grow exponentially with the levels. They become more powerful, but of course your opponents become more powerful. It's a D20 game. There is that bubble of level progression, just as you have with 3rd edition and to a degree with 5th edition. Bounded accuracy allowing. It's still a fair old number of options. So choice over complexity, but it's a caveat and one worth considering. And the other is bonuses. So the powers, the feats, the circumstantial bonuses, I mean, you started to see them, couldn't you, in the powers that I was talking about? Oh, until the end of your next turn, this thing is in play. Keeping track of those bonuses can be complex. There are ways of, I think, doing it so that you can keep track of things. And it frankly, it probably doesn't matter that much if you forget them from time to time. It might make things a little bit harder for the PCs, but nothing fundamentally breaks. But for me, the sort of incremental bonuses, the way they affect in particular areas, That's the closest thing that I've got to complexity in the game. Overall, I would say it's written for maximum game fun. It's definitely a fun version to play. Is it all about combat? Well, it is D&D. And you can have... I'm having some of the best and greatest in-character role play of virtually any game I've ever played in my current 4th edition campaign. It's just brilliant. And it's in character on the Discord chat in between the sessions. It's so rich. But we have these intense combat encounters as well. So I don't think it's all about combat. The cool powers are about combat, so the focus will often be there. I think that's fair enough. It is D&D. But it doesn't preclude some great role-playing at all. So I'm going to call that sort of pretty much a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been interesting to you. The 4th edition is I'm not going to call it a complex game. It has made changes, but it's remarkably familiar. D20 system. You've got your classic saving throws as were. They're now static saves or static defenses. Skills, difficulty classes, and the powers. Each of the powers pretty much tells you what they do, with a little bit of description as well. And so it's pretty much all on the card. And therefore it's quite easy to play. And I will say, actually, as a DM, it's one of the easiest ones to run, because the monster stats, which I won't dwell on, I've talked about them in another video, are all on a card again, and it's all there. There's no cross-referencing. You just look at the card and pick a thing. You pretty much pick a thing like the players do. You pick a thing and do the thing. It's quite easy. So 4th edition, I would encourage you to play it if you haven't tried it. I'm hoping I haven't put you off. It's a great superheroic version of D&D. Everyone's got these cool powers, which you can name, which of course you can name your own. You can call them your own. And it's about describing what you're doing in the heat of action. And it really encourages that kind of play, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. That terminates this video for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I did mention Confer. I might put Confer down in the show notes. I mean, if you happen to be watching this before 10th and 11th of July 2021, then great. You may well want to play some 4th edition at a convention, online convention I'm running. There's about 4 or 5 games up there at the moment. A whole range of different D&Ds. I think I've got one in Dark Sun. We've got, I think, one in Eberron. We might have some Gamma World, which is the 7th edition of Gamma World, which is using the 4th edition rules. I'm running a classic sort of dungeon delve in, well, Nentia Vale, which is the default setting. Yeah, if you want to play, have a look at that. If not, get in touch and I'll get you hopefully hooked up with some other DMs who are playing games if I can. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that convention. It's going to be a lot of good fun. And maybe, just maybe, I will see you there. But if not, take care. And yeah, enjoy your gaming, 4th edition or otherwise. See you later.